we've normalized menstrual suffering. We expect that you're going to be in pain, and we expect you're going to have PMS and be cranky, and it's just normal. It's normal in the sense that it's common, but it's not healthy. It's not normal in that way. It's a sign that there's something wrong with your body that needs help. There's a hormonal imbalance or allergies or inflammation or something is going on that is causing a problem. I'd say the first thing you can do is really take a step back and examine your life in depth. Really look at, what are you eating? What are your stress levels? Those are two really, really big ones alone.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Carpe Diem Living the Podcast. I am your host, Shane Gitmed, and today we have someone by the name of Allison, who's based in Vancouver. So we are in Canada again, guys, and today we're going to learn about this is mainly geared towards women, but it wouldn't hurt for men to kind of understand what we go through. So Allison, tell us about what you do in the holistic field, your journey, and just what brought you here.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited. So I am a fertility awareness and menstrual cycle health educator with a main focus on really teaching people to chart their cycles and use that either for pregnancy planning or managing hormonal health from a more holistic perspective, and also as a natural birth control, which is actually over 99% effective, which a lot of people don't know. So that's it in a nutshell, really. I've always worked in the field of sexual health education ever since I was young. I was always just really fascinated and interested in it. And I originally started out volunteering on our local equivalent of the Planned Parenthood on their telephone helpline. So that was mostly birth control counseling people were calling about. And I loved it so much, I decided to turn it into a career. So I went off and got a master's in sex education. And then I eventually discovered holistic reproductive health and the fertility awareness method, which is what we call when you're tracking your cycle. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing and wonderful. And I'm just so excited by it and passionate and want to teach it to other people. That's what I do.
Yeah, and I feel like you'll be able to crush a lot of myths that people have when it comes to this.
So.
Yeah, because for most women, we just learn about what goes on in sex ed, right? I don't know. I'm sure in Canada, you guys have that class in high school, sex ed.
Yeah, it's in the curriculum, but the quality of class you get completely depends on where you live and what school you go to and who your teacher is. So it's really inconsistent.
That makes sense. Yeah, because that's where all the misinformation comes from. And people think, like, one of my favorite ones, and you're going to laugh, is the one where I don't know who started this, but I heard this from one woman and I had to just be like, that is not true, where you can't get pregnant while breastfeeding.
Okay. Well, there's some truth in that, actually.
There is. Okay.
So if you are fully, completely breastfeeding, so that means like on-demand breastfeeding, whenever the baby wants it, if you're not using a soother, so basically the mother is the soother, right? If you don't give them any water or any other food, and if you sleep with them and feed through the night, plus the baby's less than 6 months, plus your periods have not returned, then it is 98% effective as a birth control. However, and this is a really big but, is that most people don't breastfeed in the way that's the most effective in terms of stopping their periods coming back. So what I tell people is that if you really want to avoid pregnancy at that time from a more natural perspective, you really got to keep an eye out for your cervical mucus, which is something I'll explain more about later. But basically the mucus is what your body produces around ovulation. And people who've been trying to get pregnant are probably aware of their mucus, but that can come back at any time. And two people who are doing everything the same, like fully breastfeeding, like bed sharing, feeding their baby overnight, all that stuff, one could still get her period back at 6 weeks and another one can take up to a year. Theoretically, it could work, but you just don't really know. And so I definitely recommend maybe paying a bit more attention to your body and your signs of ovulation. And then if you really don't want to get pregnant, using other methods as well.
Yeah. I was definitely in the boat where I'm like, I don't want an accident, so we're not gonna do that. Yeah. What is your typical client?
So I kind of mentioned a few things when I answered that last question, which I probably need to clarify a bit. But basically, the fertility awareness method it's a way of tracking your menstrual cycle, because your body makes actually observable and recordable signs that you are nearing ovulation and that you're fertile. And so there's various different things you can track and look for. So cervical mucus is one, and that's like what people normally call discharge that you'll see around mid-cycle, around ovulation. There's also your body temperature changes around ovulation, the position and feeling of your cervix changes. There's certain hormonal markers as well, and some calendar calculations. And so the fertility awareness methods, there's lots of different methods available, and they all track different combinations of those things related to the cycle. And so the one that I teach focuses on the cervical mucus and the body temperature. And so I have people coming to me either because they want to get a hormonal birth control because they're not happy with how it feels in their body, or they have really bad side effects. That's a big group of people, and they're still looking to avoid pregnancy. So I'll teach them how to use this for a natural birth control method, which is over 99% effective, which most people don't know. And then I also have a group of people who are coming to me trying to get pregnant. Those are kind of the two groups that I see.
Got it. Because I know, like, growing up, there were people I knew that took birth control because I kept hearing like, yeah, I'm taking birth control because it helps with my hormones, and they would have really bad acne or something. But then there's also a part of me was like, are you sure it's for that reason? Like, you just never know. So I'm just like, okay. And I remember there was once where I brought it up to my mom when I was younger, like this was in my teen years, that I wanted to bring it up because my parents have always been very modest when it comes to this stuff. Like, we never talked about it. Everything I ever learned was through school. And so I remember one time I brought it up, and my mom was like, why would you want to go on that? She's like, are you doing something? I'm like, no, that's not the case. So with the natural birth control, how would one be able to implement that? Like, I'm super curious about that.
Sure. Can I just respond to something you said a second ago first?
Yeah,
A lot of people do go on hormonal birth control to regulate their cycle. And I say that in quotations, regulate, because things like really heavy cramps or acne or irregular periods. So that's what you mentioned, right? And a lot of people go on it for that reason. And you mentioned myth busting. So this is a myth I want to bust, is that
let's go.
The pill does not regulate your cycle or fix your hormones. What it does is it's more like a Band-Aid or symptom management, right? So it will help get rid of those symptoms you're having, but whatever underlying hormonal issue is going on to cause those symptoms in the first place, that's not being fixed. That's still there. So some symptom relief might be what you want at that time, as long as you understand that problem is still there. So if you really want to heal your body, you need to have natural, regular cycles without birth control and focus on healing from like a more holistic type. I want people to understand that the pill is symptom management or like a Band-Aid solution. It's not actually fixing the problem. That's my main point with that one. So you asked about how does the birth control work? So basically, like I said, your body produces cervical mucus around the time of ovulation. And so what people do is they learn how to observe their mucus. So it's basically every time you're in the bathroom, you're wiping a certain way, you're looking, you're figuring out like how much does it stretch, what's the color, all these kinds of things. What does it feel like? And depending on what you're seeing, that tells you if you're fertile or not. So anytime you see mucus at all, you are considered to be fertile, because it's a sign that ovulation is approaching and coming in the next few days. And we don't know exactly when that's going to happen. And the magical thing about the mucus is it keeps the sperm alive for up to 5 days. And so you really want to, there's different methods, like I said, and they all have slightly different ways of observing the mucus, of tracking the mucus, and all of that. So you want to make sure you are learning a specific method and following it correctly. But if you learn to do that, and then at the end of the day, you write down on a chart what you saw during that day. And depending on what you're seeing, when the mucus is happening, you can figure out when ovulation is most likely happening. And then after several days later, you become infertile again, because once ovulation has passed, you can't get pregnant again until the next cycle. And so the temperature is the other thing I mentioned. So that's something people do as well. So temperature, you might have seen it in the movies, actually. They talk about it in Hollywood a lot, and they usually get it completely wrong. Basically, your temperature is lower before you ovulate and higher after you ovulate. So what you do is you take your temperature every morning, you put it on your menstrual cycle chart, and then you'll see that after you ovulate, your temperature goes up and it stays up until the next cycle. And so you can learn to interpret that pattern, and depending on what you see, you can figure out again when ovulation happens and when you're fertile and infertile. And one important thing about temperature is it doesn't give you really any information about when you start to become fertile or the beginning of your cycle or anything like that. It's only afterwards, like in retrospect, you can look back and confirm that ovulation has passed. But like leading up to ovulation, the mucus is the key thing for people to pay attention to.
Got it. Yeah, because I track all of my stuff. I use 2 different apps. I've been tracking for years, actually. I didn't realize how long it's been, but it's been a long time. I use the P tracker, that's one. And then there's Flow, which I think that's the more common one that people are using, because it even talks about like how to align like your schedule to your flow. That way you're not like, when typically you are very tired, you're not taking on a lot of projects. And I've used it to some degree, but with my lifestyle of work, I can't just shut off a whole week. It wouldn't be feasible. So, but it is helpful to know, because then I'm like, oh, okay, well, that explains why I'm feeling more drained today than usual.
Yeah, there's a million apps out there. There really are. So I would say if people are looking at thinking about getting an app, the main thing is to figure out if it's predicting when you're fertile. Because if it is, then it's just like a modern techie version of the rhythm method, which doesn't work and is incredibly inaccurate. So you don't want an app with predictions. You want one where you basically just using it as a place to enter your data. So you enter in the app what mucus you saw that day and what your temperature was. And then you need to be the one to decide, am I fertile today? Yes or no, based on what you're observing. But if it's predicting for you, then it's probably not right. And that's because those apps are making assumptions and estimations based on population averages. So the average population cycle is about 28 days, and the average ovulation is around day 14. But a healthy cycle can be anywhere from 26 to 35 days, and ovulation can be anywhere from 12 to 16 days before your next period. If it's just making predictions and guessing, then it won't be right.
Got it.
That's
Yeah.
to keep in mind.
Yeah, because I always used to rely on those. So that's why I'm just, oh, okay, it says I'm going to be fertile in these days. Okay, cool. Got to be careful, that type of thing. It's funny, though, because when I found out I was pregnant, I wasn't really full on trying or anything. It literally just ended up aligning.
It does sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And it's funny because, you know how I told you I've been tracking for years. I knew for sure that I was pregnant before even getting a test or anything, was because when I was tracking it, I saw that I was late by, at first it was just like 2-3 days. I'm like, that's kind of weird, because normally I'm on time. Like these apps, the fertile part, I can understand why those are like assumptions and not fully accurate. But for me, like at least when it came to when my period was coming, it was pretty close. Like sometimes it'd be off by like a day or two, but in general, it was pretty accurate. So then as I became more and more late, I was like, all right, this is not normal. I normally have it by now. There's no reason. And then we confirmed it through a blood test. So that's how that came about. I think it's just super important to be aware of your body in that way, because say like something happens and you need to let your doctor know, it's better to have that data and those logs, so you can always go back and see like what may have been happening at that time.
Even if people don't want to do like the really detailed tracking that I do, just having that knowledge and being aware of like, what does the mucus mean and like what's going on in your body, just understanding how it works is incredibly empowering for people, even if they never bother tracking it. I think it's really important to understand your own body, for sure.
I really wish I would have known about managing symptoms for my menstrual cycle holistically back then, because man, I used to have the worst cramps, just really bad headaches. I used to get really low iron, everything under the sun. And this was just during my teenage years. So I just took Midol, I took pain relief, and I'm kicking myself now because I'm like, why did I do that? But during those times, there was no information on this stuff. And you just assume, okay, this pill says it's going to do this, so that's why I'm buying it. And it just would go on from there. So if you were to talk to someone that had like really bad menstrual symptoms, what advice would you give them as far as managing it holistically?
I think you're right. There's no information really out there. I mean, there's more and more these days with the whole trend towards more holistic and eco-friendly living and all that kind of stuff, which is amazing. I'm so happy about that. But kind of in our society, we've normalized menstrual suffering. We expect that you're going to be in pain, and we expect you're going to have PMS and be cranky, and it's just normal. It's normal in the sense that it's common, but it's not healthy. It's not normal in that way. It's a sign that there's something wrong with your body that needs help. There's a hormonal imbalance or allergies or inflammation or something is going on that is causing a problem. I'd say the first thing you can do is really take a step back and examine your life in depth. Really look at, what are you eating? What are your stress levels? Those are two really, really big ones alone. There's a lot in there. And then there's specific things individually. You may not have a certain amount of nutrients that you need because everyone's different. That's the thing. There's no like magic solution that will work for
No.
everybody. But definitely food is a huge one. You can do a lot with food. Food can cause allergies and inflammation and things like that, which can really affect your cycle. There's certain foods that are better for some people than others. And the thing is with most holistic stuff, you kind of have to be your own little guinea pig experiment and see what's a common reason that this happens for people. And then you, whatever it is, you like say, for example, stop eating dairy for say 3 cycles. I usually recommend at least 3 cycles to see if there's an effect. And then you see how you feel. You see if it makes a difference. And then also I say working with a holistic care provider is really important because they can help make like an individualized program for you specifically based on your body and your symptoms and everything like that. But I really want people to know that you can make a difference. You can improve your symptoms by looking at your stress levels, and your sleep's really important, exercise, what are you eating? All of those things make a huge difference. And most people don't realize it necessarily. They just think they're supposed to suffer.
Yeah. They're just like, oh,
not.
this is totally okay. Yeah, no, same here. And that's why I thought this is a really great topic, because a lot of women will say, yes, I get really bloated. I knew someone that used to like not faint, but she would feel faint throughout the whole couple of days. It was just bad. She would throw up. It was crazy. At least I feel like over the years, I don't know if maybe because I stopped taking Midol and all those things, but my period hasn't been as bad. Now it's more so just, now it's more manageable where it'll be either, mine kind of alternate, like 1 month will be heavy, the next month will be light, and then just back and forth, back and forth. But I don't get cramps. It's been years since I got cramps. The energy levels, I kind of expect that because you are feeling, you're releasing a lot, so you feel a little bit drained. I always tell my mom, honestly, I'm like ready to hit menopause, so I don't have to deal with this. Like, I'm just like, I'm over it. It's been a long time. I'm done.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way. One interesting thing kind of related to that, I guess, is that the menstrual cycle is considered the 5th vital sign of health. So like in medical terms, the 4 vital signs of health are things like blood pressure, heart rate, breathing rate, something else. So really important key indicators of your overall health. And the menstrual cycle is considered the 5th vital sign, which means even if you don't want babies now or ever, having a healthy menstrual cycle and healthy hormones is a sign of an overall health and wellness. And that's because those hormones that give you ovulation in your period are also involved in hundreds of other processes in your body. So looking at your menstrual cycle in your charts, if you are charting, that can give you really important information about what's going on.
I want to talk about birth control methods because we are talking about the holistic aspect. I know people that have tried basically all of them. And the one that seemed like the scariest was the implant, I think, the one that goes in your arm. Do you guys have that there in Canada?
I don't know if that one's actually allowed in Canada. I'm not sure.
Really?
But I definitely know what it is for sure.
Yeah. So I've tried the shot and the pill. I just feel like with the side effects with birth control, overall, how long does it take for it to get out of your body, I guess? Because I know people that have been on it for years, and how long is it going to take to really get rid of all that? And then if you are trying to have a baby, what would you recommend when it comes to that, when you're trying to transition?
I recommend people get off hormonal birth control about 2 years before they want to have a kid. And that may sound extreme, but there's actually a lot of people where it takes about a year or so to get their hormones and their cycles back to normal, which is not talked about in our society. Hopefully that's not going to happen to you. Some people get them back fairly quickly within the first 3 months or so. And some people even get pregnant on the pill, right?
I've heard that too. And I'm like, what? You're so fertile.
But like for some people, it can take up to a year. So I think you don't know what's going to happen for you as an individual until you try. You just don't know. And I feel really sad for those people who then think they're infertile because they're not getting pregnant, and then they go get IVF treatments and all the financial and emotional and physical problems with all that when they simply needed a bit more time for their body to adjust. It makes me so sad.
No, that's a really great point to bring up. Yeah.
But yeah, about 2 years, I recommend. I mean, obviously that's a lot for some people, but definitely 1 year. Because when you first get off the pill, actually the pill's been well known, well documented to cause certain nutrient deficiencies. And so that's part of the issue with getting your cycle back. And then especially if you want to get pregnant, having a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby, you really want to make sure your body's got the nutrients it needs in order to do that healthy.
Right. That's so true. And with birth control, I'm trying to remember for mine, I think I was off of birth control at least a year before I got pregnant. But like I said, I wasn't even really trying. It just so happened. That makes sense because, yeah, your body's trying to adjust. And I mean, that is really sad about the whole IVF aspect because, yeah, your body just needed time. And I feel like that's when you really just have to just be very aware, just really just check in with yourself, track everything to a T. I'm all about data. So I'm always like making sure I have everything. I got to a point where I was even tracking like my moods. So that helps in general. So the people around me aren't like, what's going on with you?
Lots of people, you can track so many things, like mucus and temperature is just one part of it.
Yeah.
People track their exercise, when they're drinking, when they have sex. That's actually really important for birth control or trying to get pregnant, either way. But other things you said, like moods or supplements or
cravings,
all kinds of things, cravings, really anything.
Because I think it's funny too, when you live in a household or you're around like other women pretty often, you guys end up being on the same cycle. I always thought that was funny. Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. I'm a little
It's happened
skeptical
to
about
me.
that. Yeah, it can.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
The only research I've seen on that was actually a long time ago and not really very well done. And also there's the confirmation bias is something to think about too. Like everyone, eventually we're all going to kind of, I don't know, you'll match up with people at a certain point, and it's not necessarily because you're all hormones are syncing up. It might just be the time, like it's a correlation that's happening.
Got it.
I mean, I can't say for sure, obviously it might be happening, but that's just something to think about.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So with a normal menstrual cycle, just so I am aware, I have to ask this one question though. Is it normal to have like, okay, sorry men that are listening, but the blood clots?
No.
It's not normal.
Well, it depends how big they are. Like sometimes a little bit, it's not necessarily a problem, but it's usually a sign of excess estrogen.
Okay, so how does that excess estrogen, how does that happen to someone?
It's hard to say, right? Because everyone's different, and there's lots of reasons. It's like with headaches, right? 10 people could have a headache, and they all have their own different reasons why it's happening for them. So it's the same thing with excess estrogen. PCOS is a common thing people have. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of it, but I don't know enough of it.
Yeah, so they have really irregular cycles. Basically, their body has a difficult time ovulating, so they have really like long cycles. And so that's one thing. Also, people who have really heavy periods, they might get blood clots, and that sometimes comes from iron deficiency. So that's one potential reason. But like I said, there could be lots of reasons. Just depends on the person. So if someone is having really heavy period, I'd recommend talking to some kind of holistic care provider, because that's not normal. Like if you're filling more than one tampon in about an hour or so, that's way too much. Or if you feel like you're flooding, like you stand up and it like gushes out, or if you're afraid to leave the house, all those kinds of things are a sign that there's just too much. And then there's an official measurement is given in medical. If you have more than this amount of flow, then it's considered heavy, but most people aren't aware of the actual number of milliliters coming out of their bodies. So.
I was gonna say, do I need to like collect it? No, I'm just kidding.
But you can actually,
really?
if you use menstrual cups, some of them do actually have measurements on the side. So
I was actually gonna ask about that.
Yeah.
I considered using it. So I've been seeing more and more about them, but I'm just thinking to myself, like, wouldn't that get really messy? Like, I don't know. I considered it because I do Pilates almost every day, and it bums me out when it's my cycle. Because when I'm on my cycle, I don't want to do any physical activity as far as really working out or anything. Because if it's a heavy flow, it's just uncomfortable. And I don't know. That's always been I don't know how I went to school, because obviously I still dealt with it. But as my adult life, if I don't have to go anywhere, see anybody, or do anything, I'm not going to. So for like those days, I literally just mark myself off. But yeah, the menstrual cup, have you used it? Have you tried it?
Oh yeah. I've been using it for about 20 years actually. I think I was one of the early adopters.
Oh my gosh.
But I love it. I think they're amazing. I think everyone should at least try them for a few cycles in a row. Just it takes like a little bit of practice to figure it out, but they're so amazing. Like you don't really feel like there's anything in there. It's good for the environment. It's good for your body, because tampons have a lot of like weird chemicals and things in them. So if you are going to use tampons, make sure they're organic,
right?
And that you know what's in them, like it's actually on the packaging, because a lot of packages don't include the ingredients on them. But yeah, it's good for your body. There's anecdotal evidence that some people have reduced cramps when they're using it.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's probably because of the weird chemicals that are in the tampons. And they're amazing. I love them. And sometimes it's a little messy. It depends how full it is when you empty it. But like you get to learn your body and you know how long you can leave it in. And there's no toxic shock syndrome. That's another really good thing. There's only ever been one reported case out of all the people ever using them. There's only one case. So that's another benefit. You don't have to worry about that. And you can keep it for hours. Really light days of your period, you could leave it in the entire day. You could go to work and like you don't even have to think about it. So I love them. I think everyone should give them a try. So I challenge you to try it out.
I will try it and report back to you because I've always been curious about it. And yeah, I just ever since I thought about it one day, all of a sudden I'm seeing all these ads for it. And I'm like, is that the universe telling me just to switch? I've actually been more of a pad user over the years just because of sorry, TMI guys, but because of how heavy it gets. So I don't even want to deal with a possible like mishap.
Right. Have you tried the reusable pads, the cloth ones?
No, I have not.
That's something else you could look into as well.
Yeah, for sure. So with the menstrual cups, is there a certain brand that you recommend for trying those? Because now there's so many different kinds.
There's lots of good brands and they all do the job, right? And they're all slightly different. There's a really good group online. I think they're called Put a Cup in It. And they actually have some really good resources where they list all the different types of cups. They're different shapes, or some are longer, or some are meant for like if you've never had a baby, some are meant for postpartum, all these kinds of things. So I say just if you know someone who uses a cup, you can just use the one they recommend. One really awesome thing is they're being sold in regular grocery stores now. So I've just seen them on the shelves next to all the regular stuff. And usually the Diva cup is the one that's in the stores from what I've seen. But they just have the best marketing and the best branding. It doesn't necessarily mean they're any better than the other one. I say just try one out and see how it goes.
Yeah, I swear it's becoming more of a thing. So I'm like, okay, I just haven't had the guts to go for it because I'm just using other products over the years. The one change I did make, I think when it first came out, was through Cora. And Cora had a lot of organic, tampons and pads. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I did switch to that. So I'm like, okay, that's a level up. But now going with the cup, that's like a whole other thing. So definitely good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but I think it might be worth just trying it out and see what you think.
Yeah. So if they are experiencing, I guess just so it's a little bit more informational, if anyone ever has a question about this, is there certain things that you recommend to drink or eat if you have a really bad menstrual cycle? Is there any certain like fruits or veggies that help with that?
If you're thinking about cramps specifically, dairy is actually really well known to cause problems. So that would be one thing just to suggest that they try is cutting out dairy for a couple months and see if that makes any difference. I know people who've done that. They haven't changed anything else, but they cut out dairy and then the cramps are either completely gone or like very, very minimal. And the thing with cramps is that some sensation is okay. Like we expect that there'll be some sensation, like your uterus is contracting. That's how it works. But if you feel like you can't survive without painkillers and you need medication, then that's a problem. But yeah, I would say dairy is one. Caffeine also, if you're someone who drinks a lot of caffeine, that would be a really good thing to cut out as well, because that's also been pretty well known to increase the cramps. But there's a million different potential reasons, but those are some of the more common ones that people could try out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like lately, I've been more into herbs. And so I know there's certain herbs that help with reproductive health or just in general with the cycle. So I'm like, okay, I definitely want to get into that. So that's really awesome. Is there any other myths that clients come to you that you have to bust for them? I'm curious on like what other things people have come to you about.
I guess one of the number one myths that gets me the most like riled up, I guess, is that the idea that you can ovulate more than once in a menstrual cycle, or it's just not true. You can't. And along with that, people sometimes say that you might ovulate just because it's a full moon or with sexual stimulation. I've heard that a couple times too. But the whole process that leads to ovulation, like it's a very intricate, I call it like a symphony of hormones. It's a very specific process that has to happen. If you were going to have 2 eggs released in one cycle, like if there were twins, for example, that would happen within the same 24-hour period. Because after you ovulate, the hormones shift in such a way that no more eggs can be released until the next cycle. So there's only ever one ovulation per cycle. I think that's really important for people to understand. And then I guess another one, if you don't mind me mentioning another one, is that you can't get pregnant on your period. So you can get pregnant on your period. You're probably not ovulating on your period, but because that mucus keeps the sperm alive up to 5 days, if you have a slightly shorter cycle, then potentially you can have sex towards the end of your period, and that mucus might be there, which could keep the sperm alive, and then you ovulate and then you get pregnant. So if you're not tracking the mucus and tracking your cycle, definitely keep that in mind. It is possible to get pregnant on your period.
That's definitely insightful. And I know a lot of people didn't know that. So there you go, guys. You heard it here first, because a lot of misinformation. That's why the internet's scary, because there's just too many things that come up, and then it's wild out there. But that's definitely good to know, because I thought that like years ago, but then I did read one article where it was like, that is a myth. So then, yeah, that's why I never asked an actual professional. So it's good to know. Yeah. But this has been so great, just learning about all this stuff. This is all natural that every woman needs to know. And I mean, it's helpful for their partners too. I think that way they can better understand. They can, be supportive during that time. One thing that I think is funny with the Flow app, I have to mention, is there's a section where you can share it with your partner. It sends them a letter and it explains like what's going on with their partner's body. And then it tells them, this is what you could do to help me during this time or whatever. I was like, okay, well, at least I have that when it actually applies to my life. So whatever, I'll just keep that on the back burner. But I do like that now. It seems like there's a lot more information, resources to helping women just being more aware of this stuff, just like the whole family. So it's definitely good to know. Yeah. So where can our listeners find you online? Because I know there's going to be so many other questions, and I feel like this, it never ends when it comes to women's menstrual cycles. There's always a lot of information to learn about.
Yeah. So my business is called Blue Poppy Health, like the flower, Blue Poppy Health. And so mostly I'm on Instagram. So if you look me up on Instagram there, you can find me there. I do also have a Facebook group if people want to learn more and get talking with other people who are charting their cycles and learning about this stuff. So you can find me there. If you just go to Facebook and look up Blue Poppy Health, you'll find me, and the links are all in there as well.
Yeah. Yay, that's perfect. And then Allison's going to be in our Podcast Insiders group, so then you can connect with her there if you have any questions. So ladies, don't be shy. It's not TMI. We're all women. We get it. So just shoot her a message, say hi. Yeah, I would love to chat more if anyone ever has some stories about all this. And if you've used the cup, I genuinely let me know, because I'm one of those people that like depends on reviews. So yeah, I'm interested to hear about it. But thank you all again for listening today. And thank you, Allison, for coming on the show. And we'll catch you all next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.